Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike.
Thank you. I was discombobulated there.
Almost threw me off there. The video screens were out of order and it almost made me make a mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, gentlemen, happy Tuesday to you.
Welcome back to another Tuesday.
Yeah.
Any interesting articles that you have found across the interwebs? Tommy found a couple here, or at least one we should talk about.
Well, technically, data flows Gen 2 now support incremental refresh.
Well, untechnically. It's not. It's like not technically. It's the opposite of technically.
Well, okay, this is a good question. If it comes from the official source, isn't everything technical? It's a good question.
Maybe. You were just telling me. We were just walking through this article, and Tommy's like, "This is totally a hack." And then I'm like,
from Microsoft.
I mean, it is from the learn.microsoft site.
True.
So
right.
Technically, it is part of their technical documentation that would lead you down the direction of being able to solve a problem in a non-straightforward,
convoluted way.
That's what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, they're also saying, yeah, there's a few backstops you need to think about here.
Okay. So did we say what this is, or we just...
Okay, we should probably actually talk about the actual feature.
Yeah.
Tommy, what did you find?
So technically, you can do incremental refresh in data flows Gen 2.
Okay.
But not the normal way that you would do it.
So there's a pattern.
But there's a caveat here. You say incremental refresh, and people go, "Ooh, words matter, guys."
I agree with this one.
Pattern to incrementally amass data with data flow Gen 2 is not the same thing, Tommy.
You're right.
Incremental refresh
is a method to amass data.
Yes.
Yes. This is the question we had on a previous episode going,
on task.
Data flows can replace data or it can append data. How do we append it? There's no documentation. Here's the documentation.
And I think this is a good point. I do like this because the concept here is in this scenario, you have two basically data flows that are running. One data flowing to go get the data and just get whatever the current records of the current state is. And then there's a second data flow behind it saying, I'm just going to keep appending those new records into my library of things that I care about, which is totally fine. I mean, this makes tons of sense. However, when you talk about real incremental refresh, the way we've experienced it, there's a whole lot of extra, not science, but there's a whole bunch of other technical pieces that Microsoft makes it easier for us. Like you do incremental refresh, it won't accidentally duplicate a day of data. It's smart to know there's a time range and I'm going to reload partitions and it's going to break. Like this is not doing that exactly. It's a workaround. And I think the title here is more representative, right?
Yeah.
How to incrementally amass data.
Right.
Which is very similar to incremental refresh, but not the exact same thing.
Right. And for me, who is always interested in new things, when the append and replace showed up in Gen 2, I was very curious what would happen if I did append. And what happened was I had no primary keys. Yes. So this is a nice little feature, or a nice, great feature that's now available for us to append data in data flows Gen 2.
They have append, they have replace, or they have append and replace.
Right.
They need like a find and replace. Like, here's the keys that I care about. Replace only the data that I'm doing. Like that would solve a lot of this. I think that would get me closer to what I need to build.
I'm very, very happy to see this. For the record, still no incremental refresh in Gen 2. However, this is still a great feature that's very needed.
Yeah, I'm just intrigued, man, because now we have append, replace, amass.
Yeah, why don't they just say
incrementally refresh?
Appends in the UI, not a mass.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They add something new.
Yes. Well, I mean, I would say that's a great analogy for it. Like appending is amassing. It's just grabbing. Always add to the table, which is very interesting.
You can do it in a smart way or a not smart way.
Another great question.
You can do it on a train, on a plane. You can do it in the car. You can do it from afar.
That leads to another great philosophical question. If the UI says one word and the documentation says another, what do you use?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I don't know. Of course, Greg Baldini has the answer, right? Replace is technically truncate and reload, which is, I'd agree with that. That's replace.
Right.
Uh-huh.
technically.
I feel like I'm having if Larry David was in Power BI, I'm having that conversation right now.
I was just, and this is very timely as well, because I was just going through with my team, thinking through all the data tables. Like whenever you think about a source system, there's three things upstream you must consider. How do I capture the newly created records? How do I capture any record that was updated? And how do I capture any deleted records? If you can handle those three scenarios of created, updated, or deleted records, the deleted records is the problem. I feel like a lot of times when records, if they go inactive, much easier. But as soon as records get deleted from a source system, so much harder to detect whether or not they're there or not. And this is, I think, a lot of the reason why we have these incremental refresh things and trying to keep data fresh or not, and when does the data become stable or not. There's a lot of design work, a lot of engineering work that goes around trying to handle those type of patterns in source systems. Once you get your head around those scenarios, I think it gets much easier for you to load stuff.
That's a loaded phrase right there. Yeah, I would agree. Like it, especially with certain systems, right, where you're only tracking changes because of volumes of data. Yeah,
sure.
Like understanding what's deleted in a given day is a real challenge.
Keeping things in sync.
A lot of messaging or separate notifications or.
And I think for a lot of new people to seeing data flows now push into source systems, like, oh, great, it can just push there, but you have to have that backup. The fact that if something broke in the data flow, it's going to replace, let's say you're pushing to a SQL database. It would literally replace everything in the database, which would be not what you want, especially, again, going to what a source system is supposed to be.
For the record here, I do not recommend pushing anything back to source systems, usually.
Yes.
It's very, carefully thought about.
Since that's now a feature, people are going to do it.
That's true. That doesn't mean it's not. It doesn't mean it's right.
And we can put our phone numbers down there.
You say that, Tommy, and like once you start going backwards, more IT folks get a lot more strict around like, no, Tommy, you can't have more than read access in the source system. I'm not going to allow you to write into these tables. Yeah, no.
Please,
move along with your day. Move along with your
day.
True statement. True statement.
And you know what? Frankly, as a business intelligence guy now, and not the DBA anymore, but yeah, just give me a read.
Just give me a read. I just want to look at it. I'll figure it out.
I just want to copy. I just want to move. I'll be gentle.
I'll be careful with the system.
I'll be careful.
I'll watch out.
But don't give me more than that.
So let's move on to our main topic for today. So I don't know if this is a self-feeding cycle here or not, but Data Goblins is just crushing it. Every time we think about talking about a topic, article after article after article, for me, hits home from Data Goblins. This is Kurt Bueller from over in Europe. I'm not sure exactly where in Europe, but we're going to talk today about solving the right problems. An article coming out from Data Goblins. I'll put that link in the chat. And this is a really great article. Where do we focus our attention and time to drive the biggest impact, or even what kind of challenge are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve some sort of business problem? Is this an adoption issue? People don't know how to use the tool? Or are we actually having really technical challenges or technical issues? And I feel like in my recent experience with working with clients right now, I'm facing a lot more adoption problems and business problems, more so than technical challenges. Most of the technical things are like, we can make it work. No big deal. It really becomes around, how do we get everyone to use this thing? How do we get everyone to use it correctly? So this is going to be an interesting, I think, talk around this one.
And I agree. It's interesting you say that, though, isn't it? Because
it is.
Well, no, I want to lean into that one point. Like, as you get into the business, like we talk about business more,
yes.
And like we just assume the technical, and I think right there, I just want to pause, because this is where I think certain businesses get into trouble, or business users get into trouble, because technical solutions are talked about like, oh, they'll just we're gonna fix it. It'll be fine. But you saying that, Mike, is different because you understand the entirety of the ecosystem behind that, right?
Mhm.
So when you're bringing those solutions, they're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. We don't need to get into the technical details. That is
Correct.
different.
Yes.
And that is the challenge point where it's really important that if you're in the business, you're talking to somebody has the expertise to solve those problems, as opposed to just promises that you can solve them. And I think
Yes.
that's the distinction that, yes, absolutely. As you get more into the business, it should be about solving business problems. We're talking about objectives all the time. We talk about a lot about business related, business intelligence aspects, as opposed to hardcore technical things all the time on the show here, for the very reason that it's very meaningful. But I like lately, I don't know, like you saying that, and I'm just like, man, it's really important that you understand, like, yep,
Yeah.
as long as that guy knows what he's doing, or a girl.
Well,
Yeah.
it's as much as it's a new article, it's probably in the last month for anyone who's worked in Power BI or in business intelligence, hits so close to home. I mean, I think I got some anxiety just reading it. It's like, oh yeah, I can think of all of the situations that I've been in and had to learn and adapt.
Yeah.
And the crux of the article, or at least for me, was there's kind of three areas for problems: technical, business, and adoption. I dealt with this last week. I was talking to someone, and they're like, well, we got the technical side. Now we just need to sell the business on X, Y, and Z. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're like,
Exactly.
you
Right.
need a
Oh,
backup. Yeah.
yes. And pointed out here very well from our chat here. It says the subtext here is a story of questions, answers, and export to Excel. Which again, I think this is also one of these really like sore moments for me as well, because like, yeah, you can get data out, but why?
Why?
Why are we pulling the data out of the Power BI reports?
Yeah.
What did we miss on the report that requires you to get the data out? And this is where I think I lean myself a lot, and I think the story really rings true. Am I looking for those insights on data, or am I just asking for access to the data? Those are two different kinds of questions, and I don't need to spend a whole bunch of time building you a fancy looking report if you just want access to the data tables.
The ironic thing is, we talk about data storytelling all the time, and Kurt opens this blog with a literal story, right? and everybody, I highly like, we're talking about this, so you guys go out and read.
Make sure you do read it.
But not right now while we're talking.
Yeah, but not right now. Just take our hack together like description of it, and our thoughts. Anyway, the story itself I think resonates with everybody, right?
Give us a summary.
And
summarize it.
So essentially, there is the power user, right, in one area of the business that gets approached to by another area, and they present the problem, and the power user's like, I have a technical solution for you, and I'm going to implement it. And it lasts for like a week, and then the user comes back and be like, yeah, this was great, but this doesn't fix the actual problem I was having, and it's taking me too long to do these things. Now, this is a common problem in report requests right off the bat. And this is why we push you towards like having a process, having a grooming, talking to people, make sure you understand the end, because this is the cycle that starts. I need you to solve this problem for me. Got it. Technical problem solved. Here you go. Didn't solve the actual problem.
And
let's have another conversation, and I'll give you more information that I didn't give you the first time.
Yes. Well, and
right?
the first question here is like kind of like the simple solution was, hey, I need data. Quick. Yeah. Just analyze in Excel. Just go get it. Here's your table. It's in Excel. Okay. Then I just want to make sure we tie off like the features that you're talking about here too.
So yeah. In terms of feature, hey, great. But what I actually need is a system that's going to generate these files, because I have to email them. And I have one of these myself right now. Right? Like, where people are like, I have to email them.
Yeah.
And then the technical person dives right in and try to figure out, okay, hey, we can do that with paginated, right? Like, let's figure out, how do we generate this report and have it emailed out to send everybody. And ultimately it keeps going down this cycle where eventually they're stuck in this loop of, well, it kind of solved the problem, but doesn't. And let's get together and actually figure out, like, what are the end users using this report for? What are they generating? And like, try to solve the problem from the end user's perspective all the way back so that whatever we develop is the best solution for the business. And the walkthrough of this, I think, is fantastic because for those of you who haven't gone down this path before, it's a eye-opening, like, really, this is how it happens? Yes, 100%. Just change words, change people, and this will be a repetitive theme for you all the time. And it may not be the export to whatever, but it could be the, hey, you get 1/4 of the information you need, and you're so keen on like technical skills. I'm gonna crank this out. I can do this in 15 minutes for you, and then or an hour, and then an hour becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It's a Power BI Mad Libs, basically. Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
So, well, and I
need something that has connection. Okay, let's go with live connection.
Then
I need
let's go down this.
Right. Name a visual. Okay, pie chart. Name of something. Something like.
And for someone new, and even for someone who's new to the game, you just take everyone at face value. Oh, you have this problem. I can do that. I know the technical thing, and you go down this route. And I think for us, and I think it's our personalities. Why I enjoy talking to the two of you is because you can't get away without someone asking the why behind it. If I say good morning to you, it's like, well, why are you asking? Well, let's dive into that.
What the heck's wrong with you?
Part of, I think,
haven't you masked all your data this morning? What's going on?
You're like, I don't know.
Did you have your coffee? Yeah, I mean, come on. But part of, I think, what I've learned, and I think is a skill, is like almost being like a cynic at heart a bit, where someone is always asking for, we need this. Is like, well, hold on, are you sure that's what you need? And diving into this a little more, like, well, what are you doing? Like, well, what are you trying to do? Rather than, I just saw this feature and I want this, this output. It's like, well, walk me through the actual frustration. I call it the therapy session a bit because I always tell people, like, you wear a lot of hats in BI, and one of them is the therapy. Like, well, what's the problem right now? Like, what are you dealing with right now? Tell me about it, and then let's figure it out together.
I think I would agree with you. I feel like there are times when you want to push back, and there are times when you don't. And I think sometimes I just go in and be like, okay, I'm here to just tell me what the challenge is. Let's figure that out. And I feel like what happens is there's always limits to these solutions, right? And then in Kurt's post here, right, he talks about, like, there's paginated reports. Okay, great. We're going to email this thing out to a bunch of people. Great. We're going to run this data set. We're going to make a data query. We're going to make a table, and then we're going to email it out to these people. Well, all of a sudden, now he's sitting at, well, now we have 34 different reports being emailed out in this scenario. And you're like, well, now I'm abusing my cube, maybe. Or is there a better way of thinking about this? Or, and then to your point, Tommy, it's like, okay, maybe you have to do these initial steps just to gain some trust with that user, because they don't necessarily understand, like, okay, I'm coming with usually I show up with a technical challenge. We know how to solve those with Power BI. Oh yeah, you can do it this way, this way, this way, this way. Here's 4 different ways to solve that thing. But what they're really trying to approach you with is some other kind of problem. And I think this is where the article starts going, is you need to really sit down and critically assess the situation, right? If I'm constantly emailing out, and again, the reason I'm saying email here is because I'm thinking this is more of like an external to the organization type scenario, right? I have 34 people that are not in my org. I'm trying to generate data for them. It's maybe a sales team. I'm trying to lift data out into that team via this automated process. Yes, that can work. But when we think about, what do those people that are getting the reports care about? Do we really care about how they handle the data? And are we expected to just drop them an Excel sheet? Or maybe there's a better way of servicing them the data. Like, what do they really want? And that, I think that's where you start getting down a little bit further here, saying, what is the challenge we're really trying to solve?
Yeah. And he has this, like, really nice triangle, right?
Yes, I like it.
And all his graphics are just hilarious. He's got to have an illustrator. There's no way.
Yes, he does. He has someone. He has an illustrator. He's told me he has an illustrator for all the data goblins people.
It's so awesome. Anyway, like, where he's focusing in the red right here, and we're really close to that triangular point, is technical problems, right? And then on the top, he has business problems, and then on the bottom right, adoption problems. Mm-hmm. And the focus in this first dialogue, right, is much more in the technical realm, and where he's suggesting, and I think he's finding agreement with us, is you need to push into the middle or understand like there are all of these points that you need to consider when you're developing a solution. The thing that strikes me as we're talking about this is this is a very microcosm kind of like I'm a person, they're a person, right? This is a situation we deal with all the time, but this is at every level. Like really, like if you look at big teams of tech teams, like product people, project management, like they bring in the business problem. The technical people are just like hammer, 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 right? Like I solve problems. That's what I do. And I think the growth pattern, and then am I building something that can be adopted by end users? Problem, right?
Yes.
All
Exactly.
of these are super important, but it's still the same conversation that I have with tech folks all the time. Do you understand the business problem? Do you understand what we're trying to accomplish here? Because that's important for you to understand when you're just hammering away. But it's the same conversation. I just found it ironic that it's like this. We're talking on a very micro level, but on a macro level, these same principles apply.
No, I think
that's a really good observation.
That's a huge point. And Mike, you said a big part of that too. I circled the word before you said it, but trust is a big part here. But I'll put that in a parking lot. Seth, I want to touch on the technical side here, and this is true. It really doesn't matter if you're talking Power Apps or business apps or even BI. I would argue though that there is definitely a more intimate role that we play from the BI point of view, because we're doing the input value, or we're doing the helping with the process, but we're also providing a lot that people are relying on. So we're kind of forced, as much as technical as we are, and I think that's the perception that we have to a lot of people, we are providing the business, I mean, with their performance, with their actual information, the information that they need. So we're kind of forced to play that unicorn role, or that ninja role that we've talked about, that I think puts us forefront into, hey, I know you're technical, but I'm actually needing a business thing, but I think you're technical, so to speak.
Yeah, it's still a learned skill,
Yes.
right? But I think over time, business intelligence people, and when you're talking data, you're engaging with the business on a constant basis, you get better at it. The technical solutions that you're providing are slightly different,
Right.
but, I mean, for all intents and purposes, like reporting solutions. But I agree with you. I think if there's anybody that can be extremely successful in having a foot in IT and a foot in business, it's people who work with data.
Yeah.
Predominantly because they have that. But I think the caution here, even for folks that have a foot in both, is we are very wrapped up. Like not wrapped up. The initial learning curve to engage with the business usually includes a lot of vernacular of measures and complex column and models, and I'm introducing technical speak to a business user where it doesn't belong. And the more you are engaging in that pattern of understanding, right, leaning into business, and I really like the one part that I don't think about enough is the adoption. I think it's just you assume like, okay, yeah, I have this business objective, I'm solving it, and I know how to do that, blah blah blah. The adoption part, like, do my end users know how to interact with it? Have we done anything to kind of level them up a little bit to at least understand how to engage with the reports that we're building? And I like that part, but I'm kind of all over the place in the technical realm here. I think we have everybody has a propensity to think about the new features or talk in those realms. But I think the important part for me in this article is what is the data goblin doing right off the bat? They know a lot of technical things, right? There's a repository of information about technical solutions that allow them to solve those problems. And I think that's first and foremost, as a person who's bringing technical solutions, that's why your breadth of understanding your capabilities is so important, because you don't know where you're going to like find yourself in these conversations with business.
But you have to know the business lingo. And that's where you're put in the forefront. This is the same thing like going, I want to be an actor, and that night someone goes, good news, you're Hamlet. The same night. Like, there's so much we have to learn, not just the technical side. of we have to understand the business lingo, who we're talking to, the politics of that.
I don't know why you guys think this is so hard. I just usually shove it into ChatGPT and it tells me the answer anymore. I'm totally don't understand.
Yeah, for sure, for real.
See, I would I just amassed the incremental.
Oh, what's your
refresh
question?
stuff.
How to get paginated reports to work? Yeah, okay. Hang on 1 second. Let me go consult my technical expertise here. Yeah, ChatGPT, paginated reports. Okay, yeah, here's 3 articles. Good to go.
Yeah.
See you later. No, I will agree with you guys both. I think you guys are really on point. I think these challenges we are technical people, and I think halfway down the article, Kurt starts addressing this one. We often focus too much on just the technical piece. And so this triangle that he's illustrated for us makes a lot of sense, because what we're doing is we're basically overemphasizing the technical solution, and we're not asking questions, or we're not focusing on adoption problems. And I think a balance, like, yes, there needs to be a portion of the solution that is technical in nature, but also focusing on what's the business need. Hey, you want to get all these reports out to people? Ask that question. What is the business value of this? Why is this becoming value to us? Do we have any issues with current adoption? Like, we already have a report that shows us. And in Kurt's example here, there's already a data set that they're pulling this data from, which means someone has done some engineering work to get the data together and figure out how this data relates to each other. So is there a mess? Why are we asking for emailed reports as opposed to, can you help me build a report that tells me what I need? Or can we build something else that's more automated and we don't have to do these kind of solutions? And I think when later, about halfway down the article, Kurt has a little it's like a little accordion section. Why do we focus on technical problems? Now, I know Kurt, and he's a smart guy, and I'm literally going to inspect his page here. Kurt has in his page many different accordion things down the page. And I was wondering, and if you're not doing it, maybe you should do it. Every time you have these accordion things, you should send some Google Analytics data on who clicks those accordions and opens them up, because it's very interesting. Like, you're writing this really rich article and you have a lot of these like hidden gems throughout the report, or throughout your blog here. And I wonder if you're capturing data to say, did people actually click that button? Did people actually open that section up there? Anyways, I feel like Kurt would be doing something like that, where he'd be actually using some technical know-how behind the scenes.
Enthusiast at its finest.
Exactly right. If I add this little detail and hide the information, do people actually click it?
Anyways, scroll analytics.
Exactly right. So in here, he starts. The question is, and the expandable item here, as I went up to rabbit trail, sorry. Why do we focus on technical problems? And I think the bullet points here are really relevant. And I've seen these in action multiple times. Number one, a technical problem is easy to solve. You have a very simple question. I need to email this stuff. How do I do it quickly? How do I automate that? Great. I know exactly what you're asking about. That can be handled very technically. It has a high urgency, and we have a low number of resources. And I would probably put this one as number one of what I've observed. We have so much to do, and there's so little people on the team who knows how to do it. So it's like, just get it done, ship it out the door, make it work. We'll figure it out later. And so we put Band-Aids on things and throw things out too quickly. And then the other 2 items here are, it's our comfort zone. This is technical stuff. We know how this stuff works. Let me show you, let me teach you what's going on here. And then we like to solve technical problems, right? Give me challenge, technical issue. I'll figure out how to solve it. Here's your solution. Move on. Go to the next thing. It's a very satisfying, rewarding kind of experience, as opposed to like dipping your toe in the political landscape of your organization and saying, well, why do you want those reports? And then trying to change data culture, which sometimes is very resistant. It's just more work. I agree with that.
And I'm going to argue a little bit with that in terms of it's on us that we're providing the technical solutions, where I think a lot of times, going back to something Seth said about trust. Trust to me is reliance and confidence. It's not just being aware of a solution, but it's trusting that person. And it's usually a person that I can rely on them and I have confidence in their answers. But when the business sees us as a technical answer, they're going to ask us technical questions and they're going to expect a technical response. Whereas I think as in part of our adoption in the organization, not just the products adoption in the organization, is that we are more of that solutions architect, that no, the technology here is to solve business problems. It's not just a technical answer for everything else. Let us come in and help, assist, and support. And I think then the business will actually ask us better questions, or they would be more willing for us to come with a more business solution rather than, you are technical, give me a technical answer. And I think a lot of times it's very hard for us to get out of that loop, because it's very hard if they come to us, say, give me a technical answer, and we try to go outside that realm. And I think a big part of that is our adoption, the BI team's adoption into the organization.
I agree. I think I agree with that.
Okay. I'll take it. I'll take that.
It's about level setting and communication. I think, Mike,
Yes.
you hit on a point where I think a lot of business intelligence folks are, or people who generate reports, is the closer you are to the business, the more prone you are to fire drills all the time. Because in many cases, that's how the business runs. Like, oh my gosh, somebody asked for me. It's the highest priority for me. Okay. Do I have some sort of checks and balances to prioritize that fire drill for that person in the context of the organization? Or do I just assume responsibility that their fire is my fire, right? And I think, Mike, you brought up the closer you are, the faster you have to deliver. And that's where I think, yes, building out a team, like certainly getting like the road to having a C-suite, right? Say, yep, these are initiatives for adoption. This is like, you're going to be the team. We're going to like follow your lead, Tommy. Like, before that even happens, I think a lot of people are stuck in the, how do I just organize my team? And I think that starts with resetting expectations with the business, because as Aurora's pointing out in the chat here, saying solving technical challenges only increases the technical debt. And that's what's important to manage within your team or yourself, is there are going to be times where you absolutely have to throw something out the door for the business. But when you're doing that, if you know there's a better way, or you need a phase 2, that has to be written into a plan of, we need to get this done for future longevity of the report, or the report is consuming way too many resources this way. It can't maintain that way for us to succeed in the long term. And that's the important part, is there is always going to be an immediate need, but you also have to think about, where are we going? Are we building something, or are you just shipping it and triaging? Like, are you just covering somebody's wounds and not sewing them up, or like not stopping the person from cutting the arm, right? Like, he's right there. Don't put the Band-Aid on and think you're fixing it, because he's just going to do it again, right? This is the cycle that I think a lot of teams find themselves in, and you need to stop that cycle. And that starts with communicating with the business, like what it is your team does. When you're going into these realms of, okay, I'm going to give you this quick win, but hey, there's also a week's worth of work on the backside of this that we need to engage in. You can't have everything all the ways you want all the time. And that starts with, as technical people, being able to describe that workload and what the teams have to do to the business, so they understand that, okay, well, they are my easy button, but I know if I make this request, they're not going to do it. So I'm just going to figure it out myself.
Do you guys have a catalyst moment when you almost had this aha moment yourselves in your career with BI?
I mean, me personally, yeah. But I think regardless, it's going to happen, because what I've also seen it where teams start disintegrating because people burn out. You don't want to work there anymore.
Yeah.
And I also feel like there's a level here too. So, Seth, I want to address your question around when you see burnout, and also Tommy, when did I see this a part of my career? Right. One thing I think I gleaned in very early here was the automation of things. Right. To me, the automation of things and how to get things out in a regular pattern. Like, I've talked about this before. I was in a company. We had what we called picnic benches, down the rows of aisles, and this was my aha moment, right? I'm just looking like, so the idea is you're able to walk down the row and you're able to see everyone's computer screens all the way down. But we're walking through operations or sales or finance or supply chain, every one of them, you could just kind of walk down. You can see, someone, you can't read anything because it's kind of far away, but you can see like, oh, I can you're in an email. I can see you're, watching a YouTube video. I can see, whatever. There's things there that are keeping people accountable about what they're doing. Well, you're looking at people's screens, and I can't tell you, I was walking down the row and I kept seeing Excel after Excel after Excel after Excel. And I had this aha moment for me. And I was like, you know what? This really feels like, instead of us working in a machine shop where we're building parts and manufacturing things, we're in a machine shop of data. And to me, it was like, we're all just sitting in front of these machines now, picking up data here, massaging it a little bit, and then dropping it over there. We were automating our own things. And I was like, Excel runs our, billion-dollar business. We're making great big decisions off of things that are happening inside Excel. And then you read blog articles like, well, 95% of all Excel sheets have a likely error in it, or some absurdly high number. Don't quote me on the percentage there, but there's an absurd high percentage of Excel sheets have issues in it. There's errors in it. So myself was like, well, how do I test this? And so I got introduced to a lot of finance concepts around, okay, well, when you take all the parts and you add them together, and you have to do a sum to make sure they actually make zero, so you didn't lose any money in your financial analysis. I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. But it was around a lot about automating and making sure automation was working to help with this. So to me, that was my aha moment. And I think that is a spurring moment. And I was able to watch as I interacted with other teams about things around Power BI. I was able to see other people's light bulbs click on, like, oh, I can automate this. Oh, I don't have to do all this extra work. I can make things easier or more efficient for my workflow. And I always felt like there was this give and take relationship. When we say trust earlier on here, I was like, hey, the trust piece for me was, let me help you reduce the amount of work you do on a daily basis. But in order to do so, I need you to commit with me to learn something new. So there was a lot of resistance in my culture while we were doing this work. It was people like, I'm too busy. I don't have time to learn something new. But I was like, if we don't take the time, let me help you build your first couple solutions. And from there, I saw people's, like, the light bulbs clicked on. We were able to help them build their own things. And we were slowly moving the data culture with strategic members of the team. And as we did that, those team members, those leads, those quote unquote Power BI champions across different teams started showing their boss how efficient they were, how fast they could get data done. And they started communicating their own successes. And that success in that person in a different team is what started changing the data culture for the rest of that team. They became the lead. They got more responsibility. They were able to help other people in their team. And it kind of started growing a little bit like a very slow wildfire. It doesn't happen all at once at one spot, but it was trying to invest in strategic people to help move the broader path or the broader swath of data culture across the company.
Yeah. I think leaning into the business section a little bit, there are like four main things and why you want to lean into the business and understand the overall objective first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he does a great job of outlining this, but the undertone within here in how they finally solve the problem,
I liked it,
is fantastic. And the first point I want to make in why we want to lean into the business is what technical people tend to do, even myself, right, is you oversimplify a solution based on your previous experience, right? Somebody's telling you something, you're like, oh, yep, I got this one. I know how to solve it. And you really didn't engage far enough, meaning that in many respects also, you need to have somebody with you side by side that understands the domain knowledge, like all the way through. Because as he's writing his story, it's like, hey, I have this problem. The goblin didn't dig far enough and was just like, I got you. Here you go. And then when they got together, it's like, okay, here's what's actually happening. Now we dig down and like, oh my goodness, like there's a ton more going on in as it relates to the business. And then you're automatically thrown into adoption because she's automating things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point you're making. Like one of the biggest values we bring is just getting out of this vicious cycle of people manually doing Excel
Yes.
work.
Correct.
And I don't know what the propensity is, right? Like 95% of the world runs on Excel. But like, why is it that everybody feels the need that they have to see the data when all they're doing is the same thing that data professionals are doing. Like you're just aggregating, you're just summing, you're just throwing a pivot table in there. Like and trust, right? Could be a component of that. But also, and I don't know if this fits in the business area or in the adoption, but like understanding that business process that you're engaging in also brings the opportunity for us to communicate the absolutely horrible practices that have been created because business just runs at a million miles an hour, right? And even in this example, it's like, oh yeah, we're giving these Excel files out. We didn't ask what the end users are doing. They're building their own reports. Well, that's a huge time waster, right? And then they're sending them out to people that they shouldn't be sending the data to. So you have a data you have a data security problem.
Yeah, there's a governance issue here too.
A bunch of people sending data outside the organization. Whereas when you have a reporting tool or access to certain things, like you're locking down who has access to it, it's not this free form thing that can be sent to anyone and anywhere. And that's also part of another push towards like an organization that hasn't adopted any sort of data strategy to say like, hey, this is why we at least want to put some sort of guardrails on things. Let us help engage, let us fix these problems. But like we need to have some rules and governance around like what people know they can do with raw data in the wild.
Love that. And I think your point to go back to the article here just briefly as we get closer to the end of the article, which is our conversation is very well filled. Like we're literally talking about the points right before Kurt gets to the next section in the report. So I really align with the way Kurt's presenting this one. It's just great. But in his, the question around what are you doing with these exports? What are you doing with these reports that we give you? And he does a great job. This is what I see all the time. Hey, I'm taking some data that you have. You're missing some data. I'll merge it together. Or I'm taking multiple reports and I'm kind of merging it down into a PowerPoint slide deck. Like that's, and my question here is, oh man, I'm gonna step on my own nerve here for a second. Microsoft keeps touting Power BI is the PowerPoint of data. No, it's not. Power BI is the home of data, and PowerPoint is just a stupid tool that you use to make stuff happen and make it look pretty. I know there's a lot of people who have very different opinions on me around PowerPoint, but I feel like PowerPoint is an okay tool. Again, this is probably Michael's inefficiency to be efficient with the PowerPoint, and this is my weakness because it's not my technical area.
Let's call it
PowerPoint Rage World Tour.
Let's call it what it is, okay? PowerPoint is a refined communication tool. Think about a present. Well, I can't say, Mike. Think about a presentation because you don't like using PowerPoint.
I'll just build it in Power BI as slides.
I've seen those too, man.
Especially with different audiences, PowerPoint is very successful because you have to. It forces you to condense your thoughts
100% agree.
A slide.
Yes,
and honestly, like that's what its main focus.
I will agree.
Very worthwhile tool.
I got more.
Personally, I would like to walk away from PowerPoint, but regardless, right? Data makes it from whatever place it is, and it makes it into a PowerPoint slide deck because we want this PowerPoint slide deck to have images or screenshots or a snapshot of data, and we want to get that out to people so they can go look at or review those slide decks. So, I mean, and then the other parts he talks about here is, right, there is general managers, sales managers, right? They're using very specific portions of data. What's my month to date sales? What do I need to do to meet my objectives? Or there's sales lead managers thinking about what are my year-to-date customer sales? Which customers are lagging behind? Do I need to go tap on the shoulder and trying to increase that relationship? So there's a lot of different needs that are going on in the data, but everyone's kind of taking this different lens, right? And the fact that you understand, okay, we're going from Excel, building things, getting to PowerPoint, and that challenge or thinking about that scenario is slightly different here. And I've just recently had this issue. How do we build, hey, Michael, we've got all these reports. How do I get these visuals and things into a slide deck? Well, my opinion is just learn how to build the slide deck or a portion of the slide deck inside Power BI. It builds the slides for you. You can literally export the images of this report as slides in there. And it even gives you the link back to the real report when you don't want to look at static images anymore. So you can at least carve out portions of that and use that for what you need. So, but you have to be thinking about this Power BI report is my slide deck. So you have to make it match what your slide deck is doing. So you have to kind of align them a bit there. So there's some interesting things that you can do to be around this, but I really like the framing of the why we're using the reports. And then comes the why do we rely so heavily on exports and PowerPoints? And this is another one. It's a deployment solution without any change management. There's no effective requirements. The lack of requirements is a major issue here. People cannot articulate what they need. It happens all the time. And then there's ineffective or resistance to change. This is the way I do it. I don't want to learn something new. We just talked about that earlier. And then eventually the solution is just not used because these things build upon themselves.
Is it a difference in thinking though? Right? Like you say that, and it is fundamentally one of the biggest problems when you're engaging with a business user, right? But are they used to thinking that way? Do we just train people to be like, you know what? Fire, bam, I'm gonna put it out all day long. And then the reality is when you say, hold on, you're asking me to go invest a bunch of time to solve this problem for you, and I'm more than willing to do that. Can you encapsulate, right? What are the key things that you need me to do? What are the things you want to do with this report? And I think is the actual challenge that people don't know how to respond to that.
Yes,
I think
because
yes.
I think it's the perception. It is, to me, the more I'm hearing this conversation, the proactiveness that Mike had, the conversation that what you've been talking about, said this is about the perception everyone has about BI because they still consider them IT. And I'll kind of give two pretty large examples here of exactly how this worked. I've been in a situation building a report to spec from one stakeholder that was going to be a big to-do for a certain department. That report rolled out and nobody used it, and it did not solve anyone's need. And this was when BI was relatively new, but it was per spec, drill through. It had all the technical aspects. You can fast forward with that same department, and the proactiveness of the BI team doing adoption and rolling out, saying kind of like basically putting the sales pitch of we're more than just data. Here's things that we can do, to actually deliver a report for a sub department, walking through with them, talking through their problems, what they're having outside of a report or just data of what are they trying to do, delivering something that became requested by basically every team or department within that organization. There's a big part here of, if people don't know, they're not going to ask you a business or that type of question if they consider you just in this small box. And then that perception does not change. I really do believe this, unless we make proactive actions to go out there and promote ourselves and, in a sense, toot our own horn, or just to expand the perception. This is all about perception of us, whether people think we're in IT or they actually consider this BI, we're this part of the support. We can help a larger aspect here.
I think so. I'm not as much of I'm not sure how much I agree on the tooting our own horns and delivering that value there for people. However, what I would say is I think it's more about helping people discover what their requirements are, for me, in my experience. And if we go like a little bit further down in Kurt's article, and I'm getting every time, the further we're talking right into the target, is literally, we're literally leading the article as we talk here, which is not in plan. We're just kind of talking about things that we care about. It goes right into, why are the Power BI reports not being used? And again, Kurt does a great job, right? He's hitting the nail on the head. These are the points we need to talk about. Like, if you're not seeing this, you're not listening in the business of what's going on here, because it talks about, why are we having this issue? Well, there's many reasons. And in this world, this is what typically happens. Most, or 90 or 80% of what you need in these reports that are being exported are already existing in Power BI. Someone's already thought about it, and portions of that already exists in the Power BI data set. And then he goes through and he says, here are some key bullet points to consider, right? We know that the data is limited, right? There's more data that needs to be added. So what's happening in some of the exports is they're exporting a portion of data and appending it to stuff that they have historically, so they get a bigger picture of information. Going back upstream and adding more data to these data sets, or aggregating them in a form that people can use, helps. As also here, it seems like they're poorly designed reports, right? There's the images and the visuals on the report aren't actually meeting the needs of those users, because these reports were built in a vacuum. They didn't go talk to the business, and they didn't work with the business to build something together to get it something that they understood and know how to read. This is what we've talked about in the past around the language of data, right? Are we communicating to our end user with something they can understand? They may not. He also talks about BATs, big tables that he has inside the article as well. So that's true. And you know, we put a lot of times we'll see Power BI reports with large, really wide tables, and the business is like, well, that's not really helpful for me. Those are the columns. I don't need all those columns. I need different columns. I want to pick and choose the columns I need. Like, so there's a different requirement there. This is the thing I think is the most issue here is people were never trained on Power BI. I don't know where it is, but people feel like if you just drop Power BI in someone's lap, just like you did Excel, people just know how to use it. People do not.
That's only PowerPoint.
Everyone knows how to use PowerPoint. I mean, it's just you're born with it. It's in your brain, and that's why everyone's trying to. But there needs to be specific training around what is Power BI, how do you use it, how do I get access to the reports, the surface area. Like, this is a huge miss for organizations. People just land the stuff in their laps, walk away, and then they leave and think that the business will just figure out how to navigate this report, figure out the buttons that you put in here, figure out the filter pane on the right-hand side. People have never been trained on this. So it's so overwhelming to them. They're like, this is such a hurdle to what I need to see. I can't even step in and get started. Anyways, I'll pause right there. I'm going to say a lot more things, but this is great. And I think the last section Kurt wraps up here is how do you incrementally get to that better solution? And he gives a couple bullet points there as well.
I think I agree, right? And incrementally in terms of larger push, but at the same time, I think the incremental or iterative approach is also the same one that is effective when engaging with business users. Back to my other comment around like, do we even know how to communicate? And ultimately, I think that is what is probably one of the biggest benefits of increasing data awareness or a data culture within an organization is training all users, all people, how to have conversations around data and solving, like understanding what the capabilities are within the organization to solve these data related problems. Because a lot of this is just people don't know. In the same fashion that we talk about, I have a Power BI person and they know 10%, and that's all that they've ever done in Power BI for 2 years. Well, they only know 10% still. The same holds true for every area of the business.
Yes.
Right? Especially so. So if we don't, to Tommy, to your point, if we don't promote ourselves or promote those solutions as potential winners for the organization, then they'll never know about them.
Yeah.
And when we engage with the business, if we don't control that communication related to, I'm not just a button you push. Okay. I'm here to help solve bigger problems for you. You have data visibility problems. Let me solve that. I'll iterate here. Here's some data. I'm going to follow up with you next week because we can solve and we can automate all the manual stuff that you're doing, right? So I'm giving you access to the information you need. You're going to go spend 60 hours because that's your problem to solve, not mine, right? As you're spending the 60 hours to solve that problem, you're going to figure out a way in which you find the solution. When you do, come back to me. We'll automate it. And so you don't have to do that again, right? And by nature, all it's going to take is somebody to do that 1 or 2 times and then realize they have a resource in you that they could just sit back and go, okay, if I had this data, here's what I would need to do with it. Here's the report I need.
Yes.
Right? But we need to train people within an organization to be able to do those things as well. And maybe this is where this, the adoption part of it comes with, that's what a COE or a BI COE should be doing, is training organizations and in helping them understand what is available to them.
Yes.
And at the same time, regulating how much availability there is with teams and doing that. I totally agree. You have to enable many different aspects of the organization, but ultimately it's got to be funded from somewhere.
That's such an imperative point, because if I'm trained or known as the report builder, what are people going to ask me to do? What are going to be the requests if I'm only known as a report builder?
Solve my problem.
Build a report.
Yeah.
But the report is and people always forget, the report's not the end goal. It's a means to an end. And if we're only known as a report builder or the BI guy that's like, well, just do that thing that you do, not that everything we do, every report that I build, every visual that I'm supposed to do is, to your point, Seth, it's supposed to solve a bigger problem. It's just an avenue to what the actual solution is. The report will never be the solution. No.
Sometimes we just need to sit back and say,
unless it's
show me the art of the possible, right?
Yeah, sure.
Speaking of which-
Call out, shout out to our last episode 240 around talking about the art of the possible. But that again, to your point, Tommy,
Yeah.
like people don't know what we do sometimes, and we think you're there to pump out reports, but and this is one of my things that I like to educate the teams around. When I
Right.
say Power BI, and
Not-
especially now with Fabric, there's a whole lot more going on under the hood now than just, hey, this is just a pretty report that you can go get access to. There's data engineering and cubes and tables, and like I can give you access to reports, cubes, or tables. Like there's a whole control surface area, and we have release pipelines now. Like, there's all these extra things that are more IT elements that have been brought forward into the business. And so I could definitely see why people would be overwhelmed with this, because you're showing up to this immense technical solution and going, wow, there's so much to learn here. I'm so overwhelmed. Which piece of this massive Power BI thing do I care about? And which one drives the most impact for me to move forward?
It's going to happen with Fabric too. Even in Fabric.
No way. Fabric will be super easy. You'll just be like, turn that on.
People are going to
No
expect
problem.
it's going to be a technical solution to a people problem, or a technical solution to a business problem. And
I was being very sarcastic there,
I know,
Tommy.
I know.
You are 100%.
I am doubling down, my friend.
You
I know.
No,
I
am. It's the last episode where I'm gonna fight. Okay.
That's right.
So, but you are 100% correct, Tommy. It's the same thing, right? We're bringing this massive technical piece here, and instead of actually saying what is the problem, what data am I missing, we go into this whole mantra around, well, I'll just throw more technical pieces at it, and that will solve the problem. And when we look back at the solutions or the things that we built 2-3 years down the road, we would have all wished we would have read Kurt's article a little bit more in detail, because we weren't asking the right questions, and we went down potentially the wrong path, or spent effort, or just solved things technically, and we weren't really addressing the problem, which was the business and the people challenges, or people technical issues.
Why do I have 200 data pipelines? Exactly.
And now I'm falling over, and finance is now yelling at me because why is this costing so much? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because we just kept throwing technical pieces at it instead of actually thinking about
builder. I don't know.
what is all the extra stuff. Well, I think this is a very excellent time. So Kurt, again, always on point. The articles you put out are, well, this one was probably one of the longest ones I've seen you put out.
Did you catch the end? He's helping out with the
Yes.
adoption planning Microsoft documentation. I was super thrilled to see that. He's got a link to it too.
Yes.
Into there. So cool.
The reason I think why Kurt is putting out all these articles here is because he's actively engaging with Microsoft at this very thought-provoking level, as he's diving a lot more, and he's also contributing to the Power BI adoption roadmap, which I'm a huge fan of, because I run a course around that whole thing. Melissa Coates' course around the adoption roadmap, Power BI adoption governance. That's something that I've now owned, and now I'm running that course as well. So I'm very in tune with this, and I'm talking and teaching on this a lot with organizations, because people don't think about this stuff. They need a little bit of help. Anyways, the last thing I'll point out here is I do want to have one final kind of surprise announcement. Maybe not surprise. For those of you who use the theme generator, we are very pleased to release to the world. We have done a major improvement to that. So not only now can you build your theme files the way you have traditionally in the world's best theme generator. By the way, it's got all the latest features and things in there as well. But we've also added this thing called wireframing. So if your team needs templates, if you want to build not only a themed file, but you want to add, a different background per page, if you want to rearrange your pages, or even mock up, again, the idea of wireframing, this is a design and IT idea. We've made all that possible now inside our theme generator with wireframes. You can now build an entire report, pages, images, backgrounds, and you can even drop mock visuals on your report and then go download the whole report as a package. It is leap years ahead of every other theme generator tool out there right now at this point. So we'd highly recommend you go out and check it out. We are very pleased to announce there's many more features to come. We appreciate all the Tips Plus subscribers buying the tool, because it helps us invest more into it. So if you like the features there, if you'd like to support us, we try to make it very reasonable for you as well. But go check it out. I'll throw down the link here.
I do want to add, while you're grabbing that link.
Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
Not just a mock-up, right? Like these are the actual visuals that whatever you set up in that wireframe and you download, as long as you're on the latest version and have the PBIP, enabled, you open that and just throw data in, and it is the bar chart. It is the,
Right.
whatever visual selection, all the properties, all the everything. So it's a huge time saver, and one
Huge.
we're really
It's the
excited
only-
with
it's-
because it brings in the capabilities of like UI UX teams to start engaging and creating something
Mhm.
that data folks wouldn't have to care about any of that. Right. So like,
And
it's the
nor do we
sweetest
want
deal
to,
of all,
right?
Just
We want to
throw
focus
data
on the
into it.
measures and making great data models. Like, and this
Right.
has been the gap that I think we've seen the whole time. A lot of time here is there is a great wealth of knowledge, and the number of MVPs I've talked to, they're like, I can make some great looking data. I can make models hum and sing. Great. And they've told me I have no capability to build the right colors and graphics to make
Right.
the report sing. And this is like, there's a new persona. We've got 2 new personas shown at Power BI. We've got the data engineers through Fabric. We've got our report developers, our BI intelligence team, and now we can engage with the UI UX team, because the art of the possible, what can you build in Power BI, is very unknown to that design team, and they will build crap you cannot make. So
This is
So
the
this is a
only technical tool that solves your business problems.
Yeah.
exactly, we have made a great technical solution to solve all your business problems.
All
So,
your problems.
anyways, we're just very excited about this new release. We really appreciate it. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. It's definitely free to go explore and play around with. But if you want to support it, you want to get all the features, there is a subscription that goes with it as well, because we help save some of your information and data for you while you're working in the tool to make it easier to come back to. Anyways, with that, I will wrap up the podcast. Thank you all very much for your listening ears. We appreciate your time. We know your time is valuable. We hope there was some other nuggets that we talked about here. Definitely go check out Kurt's article. We really enjoyed it. He makes great content. I would highly recommend reading it, internalize it, figure out how this pushes buttons for you, and figure out where you can learn and grow here a little bit with us as well. With that, our only ask is, if you like this content, if you like what we're doing here, please share it with somebody else. It really helps us get the words out about what we're doing here in Power BI. And we keep trying to talk about the softer side of Power BI. I guess this would be maybe the squishier side of things. So if you like this kind of conversation that's not purely technical, we don't do interviews. We only do we just make up things and share them from our heads. So that's what you get with us in this one. Tommy, where else can you?
By the way,
exactly. We make stuff up.
Podcast squishy side of Power BI, or we make stuff up. I don't know which one we're going to use.
I think those are new. We're gonna update this. Welcome to the squishy side of Power BI. Anyways,
Well,
Tommy, where else can we find the podcast?
you can find us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe, leave a rating. Helps us out a ton. Have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to PowerBI.tips/podcast, and you can do so. And finally, watch us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate your time. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you on Thursday.
See you on the squishy side.